pictures. That picture of you guys at the White House when you're.
Oh, that's my screensaver.
How old are you in that picture?
I don't think probably I don't know, 2 or 3.
2, yeah.
3, yeah.
So that's your screensaver.
That's my screensaver.
What do you think when you look at that picture?
You know what? That gives me courage. Like if I'm having a bad day, I look at that picture, and if I'm like kind of antsy about something, I look at that and I go, you know whose child you are. You know you belong to Rodney Davis and Judy Davis. You better, yeah. It gives me courage.
So each of these blue symbols represents a Marine platoon from Bravo Company, and I put them in order that it's reported that they entered into the area. So 1st platoon in the lead, 2nd platoon, Sergeant Davis's platoon there in the middle, and 3rd platoon bringing up the rear.
When you work these reconciliation events, I mean, you're just dealing with true, raw emotion. You're dealing with violent history. I mean, you're dealing with some of the hardest things that human beings have to deal with, and you go all in. I mean, if you truly want to try to support it as best you can and bring closure to the families, you go all in, and you're kind of in that journey with them.
A trip like this takes a lot of work. The team that put all this together includes retired Marine Corps Major Chuck Casey, plus John Hollis. John wrote the book Sergeant Rodney M. Davis, The Making of a Hero. John was also married to Sergeant Davis's niece for 16 years. The other member of the team of organizers, Chattanooga native retired Army Colonel Martin Jeremy Bowling.
And this is Sergeant Davis and his platoon, Lieutenant Brackeen and Sergeant Posey and the rest of the team from their platoon. They occupy a key position off to the west, the left-hand flank of the force here. So you'll see on the next slide, they will maneuver into position to begin to return fire there because it's an ambush. They're just getting slaughtered, and that's significant from the very first moment they enter into the area. He realizes there's a lull in the fight. They're taking casualties. Leadership is down. What is he going to do? He takes charge. As the enemy continues to maneuver and get closer and closer, the Marines are ordered to fix bayonets because now hand grenades. They're close enough that they're in hand grenade range. The reports are that when the hand grenade would come into the crater, the Marines have no choice but to get out of the crater, to get out of the trench line, just to give themselves a split second to survive. You might know that when a hand grenade explodes, it explodes up and out, sort of like in a mushroom type pattern. So if you are in a trench, there's no way to avoid injury. You've got to get out of the trench. So the hand grenades land in a trench, you get out, you let it explode, and you roll right back into the trench to continue the fight. And the reports are that at this time, 2 hand grenades come into the trench at once. The Marines roll out of the trench to try to survive the first hand grenade blast, and they hear a thud. And all the reports are that they knew immediately that something sounded different. It didn't sound like the hand grenades that had gone off previously. They knew something was different. And when they rolled back into the trench, Sergeant Davis had fallen on the grenade and saved the rest of his platoon mates around him. The guys that were able to witness his actions report that without a doubt, they saw him dive on the grenade and use his hands to pull it further and further under his torso to take the full blast of the grenade and prevent injury from anyone else. Tomorrow, we will arrive on this southern route here. We'll park somewhere here to the south, and then we'll walk in along some of these routes. And this is where we'll be focused tomorrow.
So today is day 5 of 6 full days in Vietnam, and we are on the way to the event that we all came here for. We are on a bus driving to the site where Rodney Maxwell Davis was killed in action. We are on the bus with the Davis family, Marines, other military members, other folks, on the way to this battle site. Rodney Davis was awarded the Medal of Honor for combat action on September 6th, 1967. Today is September 6th, 2024. 57 years to the day since that combat action.
So what do you feel about this weekend going to the site? I mean, what are your emotions around that?
It's kind of like I don't know how I'm going to react because I feel so antsy about it. because it's not like going to the cemetery. It's kind of like this is where it happened. So I don't know what my reactions are going to be, because I feel like I'm going to be overwhelmed, but I don't want to. On the bus ride into the site, it was kind of very heavy for me, to be honest, and I really didn't know if I was going to be able to get off of that bus because as we were riding in, I kept like looking at all of the bush and like saying, God, it's hot out here, and I was just imagining what my dad was going through at that time, and I was like, I don't know if I could do this. And as we got closer and closer, I just started feeling a little safer, because I felt like, I've come this journey and I've got to finish this out for my family, for my dad, for my grandparents that are not here any longer, for my mom.
And if you look at this time of year, look at how the rice is cut low, right? It's harvest time.
Agricultural fields.
And remember, we were talking about in the brief yesterday, that was one of the reasons they were out here, is the rice has been harvested. They've got these huge stockages of rice. That's how the enemy supplies itself and allows its ability to keep pushing forward in the fight. And so the 1-5 Marines are out here to prevent their access to these resources.
And they probably knew in advance there were existing trenches and existing ditches here amongst this heavy vegetation that they could use for cover and concealment.
Think about what the terrain looked like then. You didn't have this overgrowth, that heavy tree line that we talked about where the enemy starts to maneuver.
This is a very heavily wooded tree line that you see here, and this is also some dense vegetation.
Seems a little easier through here.
This is a trench that is estimated to be hundreds of years old, and this represents a bomb crater that I assume occurred from a U.S. bomb that had been dropped at some point prior to the 6th of September in 1967.
Do you want to go down in, or you want to stand up?
Nope. You mean down there?
Yeah. Nikki, what do you want to do?
I don't know if I can make it. I'm so honest.
Well, if you want to get down there, we're going to get you down there. That's the point. We got a whole team of folks who are going to get you down there. I'm going to fix your collar just because it's a little messed up there. There you go. We can get you down over there. It's not too steep. There we go. Okay. Let's go down here.
Now, you sure I'm going to be able to get back?
We're going to get you down in there. We're going to get you back up. I can promise you that. And if you need to hold on to my shoulder, you hold on to my shoulder. Let's go down in there, Chuck. Why don't you just take my arm like we're walking down the aisle? There you go. And I got you, I promise. You hold on to that. Over here. We got you. We're going to walk over this way, okay? Yep. I'm just going to walk right through there because there's some thorns and stuff right there. And you can see how big a crater like this is, right? And so when a grenade falls into a crater like this, the ability to get in and out of it quickly, it's not an easy task. And they're leaned against the edges so that they can see on the top of the crater. And the enemy's coming down this tree line right there. And he's got 1st platoon and he's got 3rd platoon over here, while Rodney's over here directing fire. Steve, it's a pretty big deal, man. I mean, there you are.
Never thought I'd finally make it.
Well, you did. And now, like you know, what are you going to do with it, right? Like, that's the question.
My grandfather always spoke about being behind those graves over
Yeah.
there.
And now you get to see it firsthand. That's incredible.
How old were you when you first heard parts of the story?
So the story really came piecemeal to me as I got older and developed an understanding of what I was listening to. I probably first started hearing about it when I was 6 years old. He was essentially seeking cover behind some tombstones and getting shot at by the NVA in that from my understanding, his hand was kind of above one, and that's when he was wounded in the hand. He was also that day shot in his notebook, kind of tore his notebook apart. Family still has that notebook, and a machine gun burst came so close to him that it ripped his clothes off, and he was essentially naked on the battlefield. Whenever we would have a conversation about Vietnam or about war, that was the one that he would specifically refer to. And if I'm placing myself in his shoes, I think you come back with a bit of survivor's guilt. 5 men in a trench, one heroically sacrifices himself on a grenade. Why do I get to survive? Why do I get to continue to grow my family? Well, the growth of a family and the memories created stop for another family. And I think that lived on with him. And it's something that I think about to this day, right? Like, what could have been the possible outcomes for the Davis family if someone else had done that?
I want to show you something. I don't know if you've ever seen this before. Watch that.
A grenade to save his Marines.
Just shows you how much he loved his fellow Marines, how much he loved America.
There are generations who are alive now because of what your uncle did.
Mm-hmm.
Families who get to grow.
And some of which have also joined the Brotherhood. And that is, to me, amazing.
I don't know that she was talking about you, but she could have been talking about you.
It's tough. So I'm honored that someone feels that way, but again, it's very tough. And they said in that video, like, other families got to continue to grow, and his came to a halt. And I think the best we can do is honor that, and you can choose between living with, in a sense, survivor's guilt or doing something good with it. I'll try to do something good with it.
So if you recall the brief yesterday, you know that this is the crater that we talked about at the very end. So by the time that 2nd Platoon has their forces consolidated here in this particular crater, you've got 1st and 3rd Platoon under heavy withering fire. And we talked about, as the enemy gets close enough that they're within hand grenade range and grenades start to fall within the trench line, within the crater, you got to get out. You saw how challenging it is just today to get down in this crater. They're having to do that under fire to survive. And as soon as they get out, they start taking heavy small arms fire again, and they've got to get right back in. And the decisions that are having to be made right now at every level of leadership, from Lieutenant Brackeen, Sergeant Posey, Sergeant Davis, and as the enemy maneuvers closer and closer down this tree line and the grenades become more and more frequent, we know what happened. We know exactly what happened. And so you are standing now on that hallowed ground where Sergeant Rodney Davis made the ultimate sacrifice. Made the ultimate sacrifice to keep the rest of those Marines alive. If you're a member of the Davis family, this is the piece of ground that has defined your family for generations. And you're standing here today. So please take a few moments. In the end of John Hollis's book that he wrote about Sergeant Rodney Davis, he quotes President John F. Kennedy, who said, "A nation reveals itself by the men it produces, but also by the men it honors." On the morning of 4 September, when 2nd Platoon, Bravo 15 Marines stepped off their fire base on Hill 51, they had 48 Marines assigned. By the time the fighting was done here, and they're able to make it back to that fire base, they had 11 remaining.
And of that 11, all but 3 would fight on to receive multiple Purple Hearts of their own in the coming days, weeks, and months. I've put a lot of thought into what to say out here, and frankly, there are no words to say what I'm feeling. I can't imagine what you're feeling. But I had the good fortune a couple months ago to listen to a former Navy SEAL, Sean Ryan, say something that I felt was completely appropriate. And so I'm just going to share his sentiment with you today. Since the beginning of our country, actually since just before the beginning of our country, before the Revolutionary War, approximately 1.1 million service members have made the ultimate sacrifice for what we call America today. That's our freedom, the things that some of us still take for granted. That's our well-being, for the safety and the prosperity that we have in our great nation. And frankly, why so many people still strive to come to the shores of our nation to live their piece of the American dream. And if you take that 1.1 million and you turn it into a percentage of the U.S. population over that same time period, that number works out to be 0.002% of the total population in the history of our country. That should be the most cherished. That should be the most honored class of people to ever have existed in American history. Think about that. 1.1 million, 0.002%. That's what President Kennedy was talking about, who we honor. And that's who we're here honoring today. I think a lot of us might ask things like, how do we honor them? What can we do to honor them? And so I'll tell you this. When you go home at the end of this week and you look at yourself in the mirror, maybe you're getting ready for bed, whatever you're doing in the end of the evening, you ask yourself one question. Was I an American worth dying for today? That's how you honor them. And if your answer is yes, and you think you're doing everything that those service members that died for us would have ever wanted, you're carrying out our traditions, you're maintaining our culture, you're standing up for what you believe in, for what's right, then that's all you need to do. But you ask yourself, was I an American worth dying for today? And if we can remember just this one thing, those brothers in arms, that family that fought for each other but did not make it home, I can promise you, they do not want us carrying that weight. They don't want us living with feelings of resentment. They just want us to live our best lives. They want us to be happy, and they want us to preserve this great nation for which such a steep price was paid. I can guarantee that. And that's why they did it. And I don't know about everyone else here, but I can tell you, all of those that I know who didn't come home, they would not have wanted it any other way. It's just who they were. And that is absolutely who Rodney was. No doubt. And while that can be a tough pill to swallow, I think there's a quote that will help us all find a little bit of peace. And it goes like this. For those who fought for it, and for the families like the Davises, who know the pain of the loss of a loved one in defense of our nation, freedom has a flavor that the protected will never know. And it is absolutely a privilege to be able to say that. God bless the United States of America.
My great uncle Rodney has always been part of my life. The story has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. And when I was asked to speak today, I was asked to touch on the numerous gravesite cleanups that we've been going on in the gravesite where he's buried. And in truth, I don't remember most of them. We started them in 2009, and I was 4 years old, running and helping my mother and my grandmother, not really knowing what was going on. Back in those days, we were just going to the gravesite with our friends the Marines, and I was just a 4-year-old kid running around. And at the time, I was just wondering why all the adults were being so serious. Now I know why. This story has taken us from Linwood Cemetery in Macon, Georgia, all the way across the world back to where it all started here. When I first heard the story, and I fully absorbed what it was when I was a bit older, I learned about the selflessness and the virtue of self-sacrifice that my uncle showed here. A few years ago, when my dad published the book, my uncle started his whole story that spanned most of my life, all of my life. When it first came out, it felt so strange to see it released finally, because my dad had been working on this book for most of my life. And in my eyes, to not learn from the story is to fail what he wanted us to learn. For the first time in my life, for the rest of my life, I will preach this practice and practice the ideals that my uncle sacrificed himself for. I think since we've been here in Vietnam, I've seen the resilience and strength and selflessness of the people here, and we have to learn that for ourselves and take it home and preach it when we get home. I think if we do not do this, we failed the legacy, and we need to make sure we continue his legacy and take it into the future and keep going. And that's all I had to say. Thank you.
No. Nikki, we're just going to take a few more minutes here. You take your time quietly, and when you guys are ready to go, that's when we'll go.
No, I love you. This is for you. It's all for you. It's all for you. Everything I've done for you and for Sammy. Okay? Always know that.
It's not words.
It's not to thank.
It's not words. It's not words. Thank you. It means so much.
Always be there for you. Always love you.
Thank you so
no matter
much.
what. Always. Okay? Your dad's a great man. The world could use more of him. I wish I'd known him. He's the kind of man I strive to be every day.
I think Granny will want us to pray.
Mm-hmm. You gonna pray? You got to pray us out. Pray us out, Edgar.
Mind if I join you?
Yeah, pray us out.
We ask that you just cover our family as you continue to cover us as you have always done. That you lead us, you guide us, and you bless us.
I really have to pinch myself because I really, in a million years, would have never thought that we would end up here. I never thought this was going to be a chapter in our story. And I think about like the people that, like my grandparents, that how much this would have meant for them to be able to go on this journey, and my uncles for them to go on this journey. But you know what? It came, the journey happened. And and my family, for my family to be here with me, it just means the world to me.
Love you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
The next day was our last day in Vietnam, and I talked to Colonel Bowling one final time. As we were all there witnessing that powerful scene you just watched, he asked this question.
What are you going to do with it, right? Like, that's the question.
Just a few hours after leaving that bomb crater, Colonel Bowling clearly knew his answer to his own question.
It's clear to us that there's a need for this. None of us ever set out to do these things, but we understand it's bigger than us. We fully acknowledge that there are a lot of other families and Vietnam veterans that need this. And if we can give it to them, we're going to give it to them. We owe it to them.